Here's something I wish I'd learned before almost losing my wife. Learning how to learn is life's most important skill. There's actually a dead simple process of success that can supercharge learning. It makes your success a case of when, not if. It's a loop of just 3 steps with a secret to making it work. As a coach, I saw time and time again, once clients learned how to learn and grow, the impossible became inevitable. Hi, I'm David. I spent years and thousands to successfully fix my broken marriage and my collapsing family. I ended up being hired for a year by the same program that I'd learned from as a relationship coach and left my well-paid professional career to take the job. Back from that adventure, no longer coaching, but writing a book to share the lessons, which should be out in around a year's time. If you find this helpful, please share with someone who might benefit. So as I jump into the main lesson, the question is, can I finish this film in the first take without ruining a nice big bit of paper and starting over? Let's find out. Oh, off to a great start. If you don't learn how to learn, you'll be stuck repeating the same mistakes all your life. So we start with principles. Principles shape how you do everything in life. For example, whenever I'm dealing with my daughters, I want them to understand why I'm telling them what I'm telling them. One of my daughters will take her sister's toothpaste and make a big mess with it. Rather than yelling at them, one of my principles is that I'm going to give both of them a chance to speak, and I'm going to focus on not me judging who is right and who is wrong, but on the two of them understanding one another's point of view. They work it out themselves. That's one of my principles. I'm not going to hand my children a fish. Obviously, I do feed my children, but I want to teach them how to fish. Every day I'm thinking, how can I teach my children how to deal with one another rather than me having to step in? So that's a principle. That's how I do what I do. And what I do is defined by my process. So the process is hold up, one at a time, talk to one another what you're upset about. Remind the two of them, because we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. Remind them to talk to one another. So that's my process there, informed by my principles of wanting them to learn how to deal with each other. That will deliver a wonderful outcome. They will hold hands and hug and dance around the living room in perfect harmony. Well, often they start screaming. One of them will cry. One of them won't want to talk to the other. The level of upset that has occurred is too great for that dream outcome of what I want. So then there needs to be another process somewhere down here. So we've got our principles, we've got our processes, we've got our outcome, how we do, what we want. And we need some other process in here to make sure that that sad outcome, that's not where it ends. We want to end up back here again, thinking about how we do, what we do, so that we can get a different outcome next time. So what's this process that goes in here? And I did say it'd be fantastic if I could do this all in one take so I don't ruin a piece of paper. I'm not going to ruin the paper. I think we're going to be fine. But I am going to have to run and get the children from the bus stop now. All right, so back, obviously change of clothes. It's the next day. Kids were successfully picked up. I'm finally back in my office to record this again. So what's that process? We didn't get necessarily the outcome that we were hoping for. That's actually great because now we have another process that gets us back to the starting point. In a cycle, constantly getting better and better at the way that we are raising these kids, or talking to your boss about a promotion, or talking to your partner about the differences that are driving her nuts. So what is this process? So big thing. Gonna have a POS. What does that process of success actually consist of? First, form our hypothesis. Our first thinking. I think that I need to approach the problem in this particular way. To teach the children how to relate to one another rather than just stepping in and deciding things for them. That's my hypothesis. Now, the hypothesis has informed our principles. I should talk to the children in such a way that they are empowered. Okay, so that's how I'm going to do it. That's my principles. And then that fed into my processes. That means that I'm going to talk to them in this particular way. So that's what I do. And then that led to the outcome of them slamming the door. So my hypothesis fed into how I do what I do. And the outcome tells me something's not quite right there. So the next step in the process of success is taking that information that I need from the failed outcome and saying, okay, now I have an antithesis. So if the hypothesis is your first thinking about a problem. Your antithesis is something that fills you with doubt about that. Something that's basically saying to you, hey, I might be wrong here. I might be missing something here. That didn't quite go how I hoped. The door has been slammed. Everyone is crying. Wife's wondering what's going on. So we have our antithesis. Okay, antithesis is not something to get upset about. It's the thing that's going to give you ideas. Okay, now I have an antithesis. What other principles do I have potentially? What thinking can I do from that antithesis to find a synthesis? First thinking, doubts, problems. Now's my new thinking. This wasn't perfect because of this, but I can put together something better now. That kind of balance between the two. Maybe I needed to listen to each of the girls about how they felt first, to separate them for a moment and sit them down and listen to them. Make them feel understood. Tell them that, yeah, I would be really upset too if my sister hit me over the head with a cricket bat. Probably we should fix that. Maybe let them both cool down before telling them to talk to one another. So I formed my new synthesis. And from that synthesis, goes all the way back to the beginning, to the hypothesis. This is my new hypothesis. And we call this cycle, because this is a cycle, constantly feeding into your principles and improving your principles, constantly feeding into your processes and improving your processes. So we call this iteration. So that's the gist of the process of success. So I said previously that if you don't learn how to learn, you'll be stuck repeating the same mistakes all your life. To add to that now that we understand POS, if you conceptually know how to learn, but don't experientially understand it by doing daily practice processes and using your processes of success to better your understanding, you'll still be stuck. Now let's talk just for very briefly about conceptually versus experientially. Conceptually understanding something, you listened to somebody talk about it for a few minutes. You're probably conceptually understanding this now, POS. Experientially understanding something is when you actually try it out. Think deeply about how you might apply it in your life, give it a go a few times. Then you start to build experiential understanding. There's another concept here, something for another video, with this idea of daily practice processes. How you can think about that for right now. Think of daily practice processes as your hero montage. That's not going to work. Hang on. Your hero montage. So you know what a hero montage is. You've watched Rocky. You've seen Lord of the Rings probably. People are walking, climbing a mountain, dealing with snow, 1,000 push-ups. They're doing one-handed push-ups now, pull-ups with just one finger. Now they're using just their pinky. It's a montage. So when I say daily practice processes, it's your hero montage. You've figured out for the outcomes that you want to achieve, the principles and the processes that you need. And now you're going through this cycle every day. You're not just using POS, but you're figuring out what other processes do I need? What other principles do I need? In a methodical, scientific way, like an athlete preparing for the Olympic Games, okay? That's your hero montage. Daily practice processes. Another concept to go into, this is even if you know this stuff, even if you have spent a lot of time working on things, you'll still be stuck, and it's often going to be due to illusions. What do we mean by illusions? So this process, as I said, this process guides us to form a better understanding of our principles and our processes, provided we use it. Okay? So in the past, I'd often start a process without the right principles in mind, not even forming a proper hypo before getting started. So often this came from an overwhelming sense of urgency. What I mean by that, these illusions here would tell me, hey, you don't even have time to work out what the principles and processes are. You don't have time to come up with a proper hypo for this. For example, wanting to have some of those deeper conversations with my partner about some really difficult stuff. But I'd be like, no, I've got to try and fix this right now. I've talked to her right now before the marriage is over, before she wants to leave. She's already taken off her wedding ring. Like, we've got to do something. And so I don't have time to form this. The illusions got in here, kind of like formed a little wall here that just basically said, don't even go through this process. Just start, act to try and get your outcome. And of course, when you don't have the right how, then everything that you do, the what, is going to be really, really bad. So the outcomes are going to be terrible. So often it came from an overwhelming sense of urgency, which is nothing more than an illusion. That was a real example back in 2022. So when we do form a hypo, sometimes we refuse responsibility for actually doing better. And we just keep doing what we've been doing thereafter. So you could easily start thinking that I'm actually great and it's not my problem. They're the one who's got something wrong with them. Why should I have to do anything? I'm a great guy. So even though you formed your idea about what you want to do, you never end up changing how you do things and changing what you do as a result of that. It never feeds in because you've drawn a line. You never form your next steps. This is us failing be the hero. Or like in a fighting game, we keep bashing the same buttons, trying the same things, harder and faster, staying up later, dropping other things, rather than finding antis, forming a synth. The outcomes are only focus. Another one of these illusions here, where you just focused so much on this outcome that this never even happens. You never get your antis. So we talked about illusions now, and we talked before about like if you don't learn how to learn, you'll be stuck repeating the same mistakes all your life. We talked about how if you conceptually know how to learn but don't experientially understand it by doing your daily practice processes, using your process of success to better your understanding, you'll still be stuck, often due to these illusions. The say now is that if you experientially know how to learn and you better your understanding of what, how, and why, because when you're thinking about your outcomes, you should ask why. Why are you doing these things? So you understand, better your understanding of the what, how, and the why behind everything, of every principle, and you keep iterating, going through this cycle, you'll win. So you don't have enough clarity around the principles and processes that actually works yet. Otherwise, you'd have the outcomes you want. Simple. If you had this, you'd get to this. You don't have the hero mindsets to keep you moving through the POS cycle despite the illusions. Going through this, despite these guys. You don't have the untethered mindsets to keep you naturally thinking about the processes instead of the outcomes. You've got this guy stopping you from thinking about this. You're too busy thinking about this. So what do you have? Discipline and the POS. Giving it to you right here. Form your hypo, get your antis, find your synth, and you iterate. You have that, and you have discipline to force yourself to do it despite the illusions. Discipline to keep getting up and taking the first step in a new direction every time you reach a dead end. The first step is always, where am I in the POS cycle? And then iterate. At least, that's what I'd say to the fellows from the program that I learned from. I learned all this as POS, as one part of a complex system of ideas. It's genius. I mean, wedding ring. I gave this to my wife. I gave it back to her because we weren't really together. And she gave it back to me in the last 6 months, after several years of working this program. So it is genius, but it's not mine. It's not simple, and it's not easily applied. So instead of borrowed terms, I want you to be like a trainee boxer, training to knock your problems out. I need you to remember, keep taking jabs. And jab stands for justification. I'm going to draw that here, actually. Antithesis. That one's the same. Yep. Balance. Justification, antithesis, and balance. Justification. Essentially, it's, I did it because I thought. If you look behind every step you take, you have a justification you could offer for why you did it. You can think of processes as steps. It's going to be a lot easier to remember. What steps am I actually taking? Your justification, that's your hypothesis. It's your first thinking. So to refine your justification, you need better lessons, which is really your principles, to guide your steps. So that's the justification part of jab. Your anti, because like it or not, our justifications are constantly facing tests, differing outcomes that conflict with whatever we imagined when we justified. We find we should have stepped differently based on different lessons, but we can't just throw stuff to see what sticks. We need to adjust our steps and lessons with the next stage, balance. Because in its simplest manifestation, we take the anti and make small, balanced adjustments, just like a jab in boxing. You're finding the right range to connect with your opponent's chin so that your eventual steps can produce a knockout. How to actually do this? Remember to jab every time until you're ready to knock out the problem. You're going to form new ideas. You're going to try things you hear or read about. That's you turning new justifications into tentative new lessons and steps. Will we sometimes find ourselves knocked out on the mat? Yes, of course we will. That's when we put a lot of work and research into finding our balance before stepping in the ring again. And we do so knowing that another KO could happen. Maybe you bring a proposal to your boss that gets shot down immediately. You're going to feel like crap. You're going to want things to be different. Well, when we think about outcomes, we shouldn't always be expecting any particular outcome. This was a really powerful shift for me. Yes, it was just a test for an outcome. Politely reminding you to seek out the right steps to focus on instead. But you might have heard this expression, okay? It's not fail fast, fail often. Fall, but get up every time. And try again with the lessons being taught. So that's it. This is something I want you to ask yourselves. Could a book or YouTube video on communication, persuasion, hold the lessons that you need to form your balanced new thinking? Take notes in a single place that you can organize and interrelate, form your new justification. And then think of 3 things, past, present, and future, that you do differently with these new lessons. The important thing is that you have the discipline to keep your hands up. And remember to keep taking jabs, justification into your antithesis as you find that, into finding that balance. Keep taking jabs. So that's it. A way to keep learning from the tests life throws at you, so you can stop repeating the same mistakes. Give it another watch through and think where you could be taking jabs. I'll put out more lessons like this as I write the book, and I would love to have you come along for the ride. Till then, stay awesome, guys. Stay awesome.